Title: The Fall of the Queen of Redwood Hills. It was 8:12 a.m. on a Tuesday when my front door was kicked in. Clipboard in hand, battle cries stifled in their throats. They came in like stormtroopers wielding laminated HOA handbooks duct-taped to plexiglass riot shields. I've been in real war zones that started with less fanfare. And as I stood there barefoot, holding a half-eaten toaster waffle, 5 khaki-vested officers stormed my living room barking about a fence panel being 2 inches too tall. All I could think was, "Dear God, I've been invaded by suburban commandos with too much free time and a Costco budget." 6 months earlier, I'd moved into Redwood Hills. On paper, it was a dream: pristine lawns, warm smiles, tree-lined streets, and a real estate brochure that practically reeked of vanilla-scented ambition. After retiring from a 20-year career in tactical response due to a hip injury and burnout, I was hoping for peace. Instead, I got Veronica Hastings. Veronica wasn't elected HOA president. She was anointed by what I can only assume was some dark suburban force we mere mortals can never comprehend. Her voice had the smug clarity of a substitute teacher who gets off on sending kids to detention. Her platinum bob had the aerodynamic edge of a fighter jet, and her smile could sterilize a lab. From day one, she had me pegged as a problem. "You didn't edge your lawn," she told me within minutes of our first encounter. "Emotionally or physically?" I asked, honestly confused. I shrugged her off for weeks. I figured, I pay my dues, put the trash out, keep the music low. How bad could it get? Veronica wasn't after compliance. She craved control. That Tuesday morning was the boiling point. I had installed a small security camera on my porch after someone kept leaving passive-aggressive sticky notes on my grill. The camera was legal and discreet, but to Veronica, it was an act of rebellion. So, she mobilized her so-called tactical enforcement unit, matching polo shirts, earpieces, and what looked like black spray-painted Nerf guns. One even had a homemade badge that read Deputy of Curb Appeal. They kicked in my door over unapproved modifications to a permanent structure, which I later learned was HOA speak for stuff we don't like but can't technically outlaw. They took pictures of my living room like it was a crime scene and cited me for 6 violations, including excessive patriotism, because I had a flag on my porch during 4th of July week. After they left, door broken, waffle cold, I called the real police. They chuckled and said, "We've seen worse from Veronica." That was the moment. The switch. I called for backup. That night, 3 of my old unit buddies came over for barbecue. There was James, still active duty and built like a tank. Mendez, the logistics wizard and reigning prank war champion. And Torres, who once defused a pipe bomb with a paperclip and chewing gum. I told them what happened. They listened, jaws clenched. "We breached terrorist compounds with more due process," Mendez muttered. "You want to do something about it?" James asked. I nodded. Operation HOA Fubar was born. First, reconnaissance. I attended the next HOA meeting in Veronica's backyard, under a banner that read, "Order is freedom." Her squad stood behind her like Secret Service agents. The agenda included bird feeder restrictions, mailbox height compliance, and a proposal for all garden gnomes to be neutrally expressive. I brought up the door kicking. Veronica smiled and called it a community safety check. Someone clapped. That night, we mobilized. James mapped patrol routes. Torres infiltrated her walking club. Mendez hacked the public HOA calendar and renamed events to things like mandatory mind control training. I played the obedient neighbor. Behind the scenes, we built a war chest. Neighbors started opening up. People fined for sidewalk chalk, bird baths, a Christmas light display left up until January 3rd. Veronica ruled by fear, laminate, and weaponized boredom. But she underestimated us. We uncovered records, bylaws rewritten without votes, funds used for tactical gear, matching khaki vests, totaling over $4,000. I requested transparency. She denied it. I forwarded it to the county. Cracks formed. The first shot of rebellion came via Amazon. A lawn gnome, 32 inches tall, flipping dual birds, wearing tactical goggles. We placed it front and center in my yard and installed GoPro eyes. Veronica didn't notice right away. That gave us time. James tracked patrol patterns, 3 times a day, like clockwork. Always in groups. Always self-important. Always silent. We intercepted their radio chatter. Veronica, of course, was Mother Hawk. We compiled citations. Someone fined for emotionally aggressive clapping at sunset. Another for a yoga mat left on a porch for 21 minutes. Then came our biggest asset, Gloria, retired attorney, HOA board member before Veronica. Sued a telecom company once and won. She joined us like a general reborn, armed with boxes of old records and a parrot that squawked, "Compliance." We found it. Bylaws illegally altered without quorum. It was game on. I baited Veronica with a trash bin facing the wrong way. She took it. She stormed my lawn, crossed the property line, all caught on Gunhome Cam in glorious HD. We celebrated with beers and slow-mo replays. But Veronica escalated. Citations multiplied. Rosemary plants became threats. She was unraveling. Then Derek joined us. 2 streets over. Beard to his knees. Drone network. Wi-Fi jammer hidden in a lawn sprinkler. Odd but invaluable. He tracked Veronica's movements. Hacked her HOA Zooms. Then he struck gold. Private emails. Veronica had been siphoning HOA funds into a candle business. Since included silent compliance and freshly issued fine. Gloria called an emergency meeting. 70 residents showed up. Veronica stormed in, militarized pantsuit and all, binder thicker than a phone book. Tried to shout us down. Didn't work. The emails were read aloud. The crowd turned. Veronica called the neighborhood her kingdom of order. She panicked. Declared HOA lockdown. Planted obey signs on lawns. Blasted HOA policy from golf cart megaphones. Then James, casually in a hoodie, stood. "I'm with the county sheriff's office," he said. "You're under investigation." Zip ties replaced badges. Her candle empire extinguished. Days later, we held an election. Veronica arrived in all black, clutching her last candle like a talisman. She gave a final speech. No apology, just a demand for understanding. Then Gloria rose. Calm, factual, decisive. Voting began. 67-5. Veronica was out. James stepped forward. "You're hereby detained." Veronica collapsed into a chair. A toddler stomped her candle. Poetic. That evening, we held a neighborhood barbecue. No rules. Just food, laughter, music. The gnome was polished and placed on a podium. Torres added a plaque in memory of sanity. James asked, "You think she'll come back?" "Maybe," I said, "but we'll be ready. With actual bylaws." And with that, I finally sat down, not in defiance, not in defense, but in peace. Veronica had kicked in my door, but we kicked down her empire. And the only bracelets she'd wear now came with zip ties and justice. And with that, I finally sat down, not in defiance, not in defense, but in peace. Veronica had kicked in my door, but we kicked down her empire. And the only bracelets she'd wear now came with zip ties and justice. But as we celebrated that night, something didn't sit right. 2 days later, a certified letter arrived. Inside, a legal notice. Veronica was contesting the election. She had hired a private attorney who claimed procedural violations and threatened to take the matter to district court. The letter was dense with legal jargon, but one sentence stood out. The defendant demands full reinstatement of her authority and control over Redwood Hills HOA, citing emergency clause exemptions. Gloria called an emergency session. "She's trying to stall us," she said. "Delay the county audit, muddy the waters. If she gets a court date, we lose momentum." We needed to move. Fast. That weekend, Derek's drones picked up footage. Veronica had been meeting at night with a few remaining loyalists, including Marcia and Connie. They were seen loading boxes into a van parked outside a rental storage unit. Torres followed and confirmed. It was filled with shredded HOA documents. They were trying to destroy evidence. We couldn't let that happen. James contacted his liaison at the county sheriff's office. With Gloria's help and our gathered evidence, we were able to obtain a temporary injunction halting any HOA activity by Veronica or her affiliates. That Sunday morning, we marched as a neighborhood to the storage unit. The manager, presented with the order, let us in. Inside, under layers of rose-scented candles and boxes marked compliance materials, we found the motherlode, backup hard drives, receipts, internal memos, and a handwritten journal labeled Queen's Ledger. It was a confession in ink. Veronica had documented her every move, the manipulated votes, the candle profits laundered through holiday fundraisers, and even a blueprint for expanding her HOA influence into neighboring communities. Veronica always thought she was building an empire, Mendez said, flipping through pages. Turns out, she was digging her own grave. We compiled the findings. Gloria submitted everything to the county. Within 48 hours, an official notice was posted. The Redwood Hills HOA is now under full administrative review. Former leadership is suspended indefinitely pending legal proceedings. Veronica's attorney dropped the case the next morning. That night, the street was quiet. No sirens. No war drums. Just relief. At the next community meeting, held in the local school gym, Gloria stood before us not as a warrior, but as a neighbor. "We've been through a lot," she said. "It started with a fence. It became a fight for decency, for sanity, for fairness. Today, we rebuilt. Together, we voted on a new board. Gloria was elected unanimously. Torres became head of community events. Mendez took charge of neighborhood communications. James, reluctantly, agreed to head safety oversight. As for me, I was nominated to lead bylaws reform. First motion I passed? No more restrictions on the number of gnome fingers. The gnome stayed. Proud, flipping the bird, now illuminated by solar lights and adorned with a plaque. In defiance of tyranny and for the love of waffles. Weeks passed. Life returned to normal or better than normal. Kids rode bikes without citation. Sidewalk chalk blossomed. Wind chimes played unapologetically in all minor chords. The fences stood tall, some even 2 inches taller. Veronica was never seen again. But if she ever returned, she'd find a very different Redwood Hills. One where neighbors stand up. Where fear has no place. Where even the quietest lawn gnome can stare down a queen. And win.